Hello, everybody. Welcome to Substance Use Prevention, Lesson 8, Norms and Expectations. My name is Amanda. I'm a health education and health promotion student at Arizona State University. You can reach me by commenting on any of the social media posts or YouTube videos, as well as by direct message on the Instagram or Facebook pages. This is lesson 8 of a 12 lecture series. The topic is norms and expectations of substance use in adolescence. In this lecture, we are going to discuss the social norms and expectations surrounding substance use in adolescence. We'll be looking at how behaviors that we expect to be normal can influence our perception of what is normal and our own behaviors. Here we see a list of the student learning objectives for lesson 8. Number 1 is participants will be able to explain 2 common misconceptions of substance use norms in writing with 100% accuracy. The second student learning objective is participants will be able to define social norm in writing with 100% accuracy. Student learning objective number 3 is participants will be able to define normative belief in writing with 100% accuracy. The fourth student learning objective is participants will be able to give an example of anticipatory socialization in relation to substance use in writing with 100% accuracy. The next student learning objective is participants will be able to give an example of false consensus in relation to substance use in writing with 100% accuracy. Student learning objective number 6 is participants will be able to describe in writing a time when they experienced pluralist ignorance with 100% accuracy. And the last student learning objective, number 7, is participants will be able to reconstruct personal concepts of social norms regarding substance use in writing with 100% accuracy. Here we have a summary for lesson 8. These are the topics that we are going to be covering in this lesson. The first topic we're going to touch on are social norms. Following that topic, we will have a reflection and a written assignment. The next topic will be normative beliefs, followed by a reflection and a written assignment. The third section will be covering 3 different topics, which are anticipatory socialization, false consensus, and pluralist ignorance. That will be followed by a reflection and 4 written assignments that deal with those topics. After we cover that material, we're going to review what we've learned in the lesson, and then we're going to review the written assignments. We'll conclude lesson 8 with an independent practice assignment, which is optional. So let's take a moment and think about it. Let's reflect on what we think is normal in regards to substance use. So do you think it's normal for people your age to use drugs? What about drinking? What about people who are like maybe 3 to 5 years older than you? Is it normal for them to use drugs or to drink alcohol? Are there any specific substances that you think a lot of people in your age use, like maybe alcohol or marijuana or nicotine? Does this seem like normal behavior? And when you think about these norms, how do they make you feel? Are there any perceived norms or, norms that you think things that you think are normal that bother you or that maybe you like more than others? Write down your answers to these questions because we're going to be using them later to complete a written assignment. So what I want you to do is just pause the video here, write your answers down to these questions, specifically focusing on what you think is normal for people in your age group in regards to substance use. All right, let's move into our first topic for lesson 8, which is social norms. A social norm is the attitude or behavior of a group. So this the group that we're speaking of in regards to this lesson is adolescent. So people in your age group or a few years older and younger than you. And that's the age group that we're going to be looking at throughout the entire lesson. And all of our statistics and research that we're going to be looking at is within that age group. You might be wondering, why are we talking about social norms and what do they have to do with substance use prevention? Well, social norms are important in substance use prevention because a lot of the time students think that their peer groups and the norms that their peer group adheres to are less healthy than they actually are. So most students think that their peers' social norms are much less healthy than what they actually are. So students actually think that the people in their age group, their classmates, the people that they know in the same age group are engaging in less healthy behavior, more risky behavior than what is actually going on. So we're going to look at a survey done by the Freedom of Chemical Dependency, an organization. They did the survey, and we're going to take a look at a bunch of statistics from the survey that, from the survey, we're able to conclude a number of different things about social norms in adolescents. So the FDC survey, which we'll refer to multiple times throughout the lesson, is Freedom from Chemical Dependency. They surveyed over 65,000 students in 25 different countries from 120 schools. The survey lasted from 2009 to 2015. Those are the years that they were gathering their data. And the survey was on the students' attitudes and behaviors on substance use. So both their attitudes, what they think the social norms are, and how they feel about substance use, as well as their behaviors. So that's what's actually happening. In the survey, they learned that most middle schoolers and high schoolers do not use alcohol or other drugs. Now, does that actually coincide with what you wrote down about social norms at the beginning of our lecture when we did our first reflection? 82% of all students that participated in the survey do not drink at all, or they only drink once a month or less. So they're not heavy drinkers or binge drinkers, or they don't drink at all. Now, 86% of 8th grade students don't drink at all. These are the statistics that we're going to be looking at. So does that coincide with what you thought was normal for your age group? In the survey, they also learned that most of these students think that most of their peers do use alcohol and other drugs. In fact, these students believe that their peers often use substances in heavy doses. So they think that most of their peers are using alcohol or other drugs. However, they're not. 82% of all of the students in the entire survey, which was grade 6 through 12, and 86% of all 8th graders don't drink at all. So what these these students thought was very, it contradicted what was actually happening. It didn't coincide. They weren't the same thing. So let's take a moment and think about that for a second. What do you think about the information that we just learned about social norms? Do you think that you're influenced by social norms? Were you surprised about the statistics that we saw from the FCD survey? Did they seem similar to what you had predicted at the beginning of the lecture, or did they seem different? Were they higher or lower? Feel free to comment your answers under the lecture video and discuss with other students. This takes us to our first written assignment for lesson 8. I would like for you to define social norm in the comment section below the lecture video. You can also post your answers on the Instagram or Facebook pages as well. Here I have on all of the written assignment slides, I have the Instagram and Facebook pages address in case you haven't subscribed yet or you don't know where to find it. Here it is on Instagram. It's at Substance Abuse Prevention 123 with no spaces. And then on Facebook, it's the same thing but with spaces, Substance Abuse Prevention 123. Let's move into our second topic, which is normative beliefs. A normative belief is a belief about social norms. These beliefs can be accurate or inaccurate, and they're not necessarily true. So normative beliefs are the things that you think about social norms. The social norm is what's actually happening, and the normative belief is what you think is happening. So it's a belief about what normally goes on in your social group or your peer group, your age group, or in society, any group. Now, because it's a belief and not a fact, they can be accurate or inaccurate. So if you're somebody who thinks that 86% of 8th graders don't drink, then your normative belief would be accurate. But if you think that most of the fellow 8th graders in your class or most of the peer group, the people in your age group, are drinking heavily, that would be an inaccurate normative belief. So they're not necessarily true, but they do affect how you feel, how you act, and how you behave, and how you make choices, which we'll take a little bit of a closer look at that in this lecture. So let's take a look at normative beliefs specifically in regards to substance use. So we've already seen that many students have normative beliefs that exaggerate the amount of substance use going on by their peers. So most students think that their peers are using substances, or it's normal to use substances in an exaggerated amount. When people perceive that their environment encourages or accepts substance abuse, that person is more likely to engage in that behavior, which we see from the surveys done by the FCD. So this is like this is what makes normative beliefs important. So students who perceive that their peers are using or they accept the use of substance use, then that individual is more likely to engage in that behavior. Attitudes and behaviors are linked. So we see that by analyzing some of the statistics that we gained that were gained in the FCD survey. So students who are in grades 6 through 12 who think that it's cool to get drunk, that's their attitude, it is cool to get drunk. They are 5 times more likely to engage in binge drinking within the month prior to their survey. 82% of students who participated in the survey don't drink. or they drink than less than one time per month. So we kind of saw this statistic in the previous section. However, let's build upon that. 45% of these students disagree. They actually 45% of the students think that most of the students in the grades 6 through 12 do drink, or they drink often. They think that most of the students at their school are heavy drinkers. So even though 82% of students don't drink or drink very minimally, 45% of them disagree with that. They think that most students do drink, and they in fact drink heavily. All of the 8th grade students who took the survey, out of all of them, 86% of them do not drink. We saw that statistic already too. However, similarly to our analysis up here, 41% believe that their peers don't drink. So while 86% of them don't drink, only 41%, that's half, that's less than half of this number, believe that their peers don't drink. Students who binge drink are 76% less likely to consider drinking a risky behavior, and students who do not drink are 13 times more likely to consider drinking a risky behavior. So what we see here is that when these students do not think that drinking is a risky behavior, their likelihood of engaging in binge drinking, which is drinking heavily and quickly, goes way up. When our students who the students who believe that drinking is a risky behavior and could be detrimental or damaging to their health, they are less likely to engage in the behavior. And that is how we see that attitudes and behaviors are linked. Let's take a moment to just think about all that information that we just saw. We just looked at a lot of numbers, so let's pause and reflect on what that means. Did you think that what did you think of the statistics that were presented? There were a lot of them. Did any of the numbers seem surprisingly high or low to you? If they were surprising to you, what does that tell you about your own normative beliefs? Can you see how a person's attitude and beliefs might affect their behavior? Please comment and discuss your thoughts about this under the lecture video, and discuss with other participants as well. Here we have our first written assignment for our second section. And in this written assignment, I would like you to define normative belief in the comment section below the lecture video. As always, you can comment them on Instagram or Facebook as well, and I have the addresses listed here for you also. Moving into section 3 of our lecture, we're going to be covering anticipatory socialization, false consensus, and plural ignorance. Now, those are kind of a mouthful, so we're going to break it down. The first topic we're going to cover in this section is anticipatory socialization. And that is the way that a person thinks about their future social life. Keywords here are future social life and the way you think about it now. Students who think that substances will play a larger role or an important factor in fitting in with their peers later in life are more likely to drink alcohol or use other substances. So when students believe that substances might play an important factor later on in their life when it comes to fitting in, they're more likely to drink alcohol or use other substances, both presently and in the future. For example, when I was younger, I experienced anticipatory socialization as a middle schooler because I assumed that in high school, drinking alcohol was an important factor in social life and fitting in. It turns out that I was very wrong, and I didn't touch a single drop of alcohol while I was in high school. So luckily, I was able to avoid this concept of it affecting me, but I also engaged in a number of other protective factors. Here we see that 25% of high school seniors that took the survey did not drink alcohol. So 1/4 of all the high school seniors, grade 12, did not drink alcohol. However, only 2% of 6th through 12th graders, that's everybody who took the survey, only 2% of them believe that high school seniors don't drink alcohol. So we see a huge gap between these two percentiles here, 25% and 2%. The next topic in this section that we're going to cover is false consensus. A false consensus is the incorrect belief that peers behave similarly to oneself regarding unhealthy behavior. So in other words, this belief is a false belief. It's not true. However, it's when we believe, even though it's not true, that all of the people around us are peers of our same age group, the people that we are around, that they engage in the same unhealthy behavior as us. So if we are doing something unhealthy, we might think that all of our peers are doing it too. Students who engage in drinking alcohol or binge drinking oftentimes believe that most of their peers are drinking or binge drinking, regardless of whether they have proof of it or not. It's kind of the everybody's doing it mentality that gives the person an excuse to engage in this unhealthy behavior. And next we're going to move on to pluralist ignorance. This is the last topic that we're going to cover in this section. Pluralist ignorance is kind of the opposite of false consensus. It's an incorrect belief, just the same way that false consensus is not true, the belief is not true. This is an incorrect belief that peers behave differently than oneself regarding healthy behavior. So in this case, when we engage as an individual in healthy behavior, we still think that our peers are engaging in unhealthy behavior, so they're behaving differently. Students who do not use substances often believe that most of their peers do, despite that being not true. Let's look at some statistics to back up that. 86% of 8th graders do not drink, but only 41% of them believe that their classmates do not drink. We've seen this statistic before, and it's also an example of pluralist ignorance. Between these two statistics, that's a 45% difference, so that's rather large. Of 9th graders, 70% of them do not drink, but only 15% believe that their classmates don't drink. That's a 55% difference. And then if we move up one more grade level to 10th grade, we see that 51% of 10th graders do not drink, but only 5% believe that their classmates don't drink. And then that is a 46% difference. So that's a huge difference. And notice that as the grades from 8th to 9th to 10th grade increase, that the amount of students that believe that their classmates don't drink really falls. From 41%, it drops down to 15, and then in 10th grade, it drops down to 5. Let's take a moment to think about everything we learned. We covered a number of topics in this last section. We looked at anticipatory socialization. Do you have any experience with it? Remember that anticipatory socialization is the way a person thinks about their social life. I gave you an example of some anticipatory socialization that I experienced in middle school. Maybe you've had a similar experience or even a different one. What about false consensus or pluralist ignorance? Remember that false consensus is an incorrect belief that peers that peers behave similarly to someone regarding their unhealthy behavior. And pluralist ignorance is kind of the opposite. It's an incorrect belief that peers behave differently than an individual regarding their healthy behavior. Do you have any experience with those things? How have your ideas about the social norms of substance use changed since the beginning of the lecture? Now that we've looked at statistics about that reflect what the actual percentages of students are that do use substances, um, have your social norms and your ideas about them changed at all? You can comment and discuss your thoughts and answers under the lecture video, and feel free to discuss it with other students as well. We are going to take a look at 4 written assignments for the last section of the lecture video. Our first written assignment here is give an example of anticipatory socialization in relation to substance use in the comment section below the lecture video or on Instagram or Facebook. You can give a real example that you've experienced, or you can make up an example. Here are the Instagram and Facebook pages if you haven't already found them. Our next written assignment that we're going to look at is I would like you to give an example of false consensus in relation to substance use in the comment section below the video or on Instagram or Facebook or in direct message. Of course, similar to our previous written assignment, you can use a real example that you've experienced or you can make one up. The next written assignment is to describe a time when you have experienced pluralist ignorance in relation to substance use in the comment section below the lecture video, or you can post it on Instagram or Facebook. If you are uncomfortable with posting about your own experiences on the internet, that's okay. You can send your answers to me in direct message on Instagram or Facebook. And don't forget, this is where you can find those pages. And finally, the last written assignment for lesson number 8 is to reconstruct your concepts of social norms when it comes to substance use. I would like you to do this by comparing what you have learned in this lesson to what you wrote down in the reflection at the beginning of the lesson. You can do this in the comment section. You can post your answers to Instagram or Facebook as well, or send them to me in direct message. That's up to you. And here is the addresses again for our Instagram and Facebook. Let's take a moment to just review everything that we've looked at in lesson 8. We've had a lot of information that we have seen here. So first, social norms are the attitudes or behaviors of a group. Students often think that social norms are less healthy than they are. Normative beliefs are the beliefs about social norms. They can be true or false. We learned about anticipatory socialization. It's the way that a person thinks about their future social life. We also learned what false consensus is, and it's an incorrect belief that peers engage equally in unhealthy behaviors as the individual does, when that is not true. Plural ignorance is an incorrect belief that peers engage in less healthy behavior and the individual. And one of the major takeaways from this lesson and all the statistics that we've looked at today is that attitudes and beliefs affect behavior. If you forgot what all the written assignments were, here's a review of them. The first one is to define social norm. The next is to define normative belief. Our third assignment is to give an example of anticipatory socialization. The fourth one is to give an example of false consensus. The fifth written assignment is to describe a time when you have experienced pluralist ignorance. And the final written assignment is to reconstruct your personal concepts of social norms regarding substance use in writing. Here is the resource that I used for this lesson. If you're curious to learn more about the FCD survey or any of the topics that we covered in lesson 8, this is a great place to start if you want to gain some more information. And as always, we're going to close out our lecture with our independent practice assignment, which is optional. In this independent practice, I would like you to create a post that explains 2 common misconceptions in substance use norms. You can use your creativity as much or as little as you want in this assignment. You can post it to social media and tag one of the pages like Instagram or Facebook. You can send it to me by direct message, or you can simply comment it beneath the lecture video. This concludes lesson 8. I hope that you learned a lot about the norms and expectations of substance use disorder, and I will see you for lesson 9 which covers the topic of emotional coping skills.